Welcome to this briefing on the role of the Sovereign Order of Malta within the context of international diplomacy and the United Nations. And it is on the Via Condotti in the heart of Rome and on the Aventine Hills that you will find the centre of our government, where our head of state, the Grand Master, lives and works, and where our administrative infrastructure involving several hundred full-time staff operate. It is where our Foreign Minister, our Finance Minister, Minister of Health and our Prime Minister, along with regional and desk staff, perform their functions, and it is also the seat of our governing cabinet, the Sovereign Council. Almost 30 years ago, we were granted permanent observer status at the United Nations, and we now have full-time ambassadors serving in Geneva, in Vienna, and in Rome, and here in New York. We serve alongside a network of ambassadors accredited to 113 countries. Enjoying diplomatic status enables us to more effectively conduct our international outreach, as our ambassadors, by virtue of their status, have access to the highest levels of government in those countries in which they serve. This enables us to cut through red tape to bring our concerns and sometimes our problems to those in governments around the world who can best help us help those we serve. And it gives the Order's local associations a status and access which they would not otherwise enjoy. They become adjunct members of an international sovereign entity. This is something unique in the world of international diplomacy and something that we should be truly proud of. So what about the United Nations? No matter what they say, the world needs the UN, for all its faults, because it can be a voice of reason in a world where reason is often drowned out by the bully and the demagogue. It is also one of the few remaining forums in the world where all nations have a voice, big and small nations, and where divergent views can be shared without fear or intimidation. And as the world's problems and issues show no sign of diminishing, we at the Order's mission have been exceptionally active. Let me briefly highlight for you some of the areas where the Order of Malta's presence makes a difference, and where our voice joins with the community of nations. Human trafficking. This is a scourge that is engulfing humanity and destroying lives. Last year at the General Assembly, in support of the anti-trafficking organization, we presented the World Health Organization with a protocol to assist healthcare providers identify victims of modern slavery in hospitals, clinics, care facilities, and in emergency rooms. This is the first of its kind and is a major contribution to combating this awful problem.
That we decided to focus primarily on educating the healthcare systems and their providers and personnel within the systems, based on studies that the ambassador inferred, the showing 88 to 92% of all survivors seek medical care while being trafficked. We would bring the human trafficking training to each site, help them learn how to identify a suspected human trafficking victim, and then know the appropriate action to take. We had to teach a clinical paradigm shift.
Human rights. The UN Third Committee is one of the most active and prolific of the UN committee groups, and the Order of Malta has been particularly active here. This year alone, we've delivered more than 35 interventions. The human rights of internally displaced people, care for the elderly, the sexual exploitation of children, and the increased use of torture. These are all areas where the Order of Malta has something to say. We add a humanitarian perspective to dialogue that is often more concerned with politics and grandstanding than with finding practical and workable solutions.
If we do not act now, our human rights will remain theoretical. The triple crisis of our environment, climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, all happening during our watch will have grave environmental, societal, and economic impacts on humanity.
And relief workers in providing housing, medical, and humanitarian assistance in Ukraine and in the neighbouring countries that have hosted displaced children.
Despite the scale of the challenges before us, we must ensure that the people of Afghanistan have the opportunity to live fulfilling, healthy, and dignified lives.
Not all of these issues are attention grabbers, and not all of them are easy to talk about. However, we do not shy away from our role as an advocate for the sick and the poor and the marginalized. And while we may not have a large population and a landmass to call our own, we do have a national conscience and a commitment to duty and service. And yes, we have citizens. Our citizens are those who are left behind, the forgotten people in the world, those who have nowhere to go and whose voice is often unheard.
For over 900 years, the Sovereign Order of Malta's core mission has been to serve the sick and the poor without distinction. We provide direct aid while advocating for policies that address the systemic causes of poverty.
The Sovereign Order of Malta, through Malteser International, remains on the ground, supporting 18 facilities, providing medical and mental health services, and restoring water networks. But we cannot meet the need alone. We urge the international community to ease restrictions on humanitarian access and address the severe funding shortfall, with the humanitarian response plan still only 18% funded.
The Sovereign Order of Malta, through Malteser International, works daily to uphold the dignity and rights of those forced to flee. We are active in many crises, supporting Syrian refugees in Turkey, providing medical care for the Rohingya in Bangladesh, and most urgently delivering food, shelter, and medical assistance to internally displaced persons and those crossing borders in Ukraine and neighboring countries.
And in South Sudan, unprecedented floods in 2024 uprooted hundreds of thousands, forcing families to move within or beyond their borders. These vast crises show the scale of displacement worldwide, but migration is not only measured in millions. Even in the smallest communities, its impact is deeply felt. In many nations, a significant number of migrants face discrimination with housing and employment, with some landlords openly refusing tenants simply as a result of their origin. In our globalized world, what too often greets migrants is not welcome but rejection. Borders may close, but hearts also close, with prejudice, with fear, with the easy temptation to see the other rather than a neighbor. For children, this exclusion is especially cruel. To be marked as outsiders in the classroom, to be stared at in their neighborhoods, is to carry a scar far deeper than displacement itself.
The impacts of climate change are not abstract. They intertwine with humanitarian emergencies where Malteser International, the humanitarian relief agency of the Sovereign Order of Malta, is actively present. Droughts, typhoons, and other disasters threaten not only ecosystems, but also the human rights to life, health, food, water, and sanitation. Ensuring a sustainable environment is inseparable from protecting these fundamental rights.
The humanitarian consequences are profound. Inadequate housing deprives families not only of shelter, but of safety, health, and stability, eroding social cohesion and perpetuating poverty. The lack of housing is not born in a vacuum. It is linked with multiple inequalities, leaving women, minorities, indigenous peoples, migrants, and persons with disabilities most affected. A home provides the foundation for livelihood and dignity. Without it, building a future becomes a much greater task.
The UN's main organ in ensuring peace and stability in the world is the Security Council. And while the Council's limitations were revealed clearly during the Ukraine conflict, and more recently in respect of the war between Israel and Hamas, the Security Council continues to provide a forum for dialogue and for perspectives to be shared and solutions proposed and discussed. Until this year, the Sovereign Order of Malta had only been invited once to address the Security Council. But this year we have been privileged to make 4 statements, 2 of them on the Ukraine war and 2 of them on the conflict in Palestine. In September, our Grand Chancellor spoke before the Security Council and addressed the Ukraine crisis.
The bigger and stronger a world power, the more significant is the responsibility it has, not only for its own citizens, but also for those who live outside their borders, yet who rely on it for service and product and for neighborly support. Likewise, in the community of nations, might is not always right, and strong and powerful peers must exert a great influence and take more responsibility in reining in the behavior of those that transgress the norms of the UN Charter and the rules-based world that it enshrines.
While responding to the present crisis is paramount, we must also, however, look to the future. A cessation of hostilities, however distant, must not find us unprepared. We must recognize that when guns are silent, the humanitarian toll will persist. The sheer scale of destruction, the economic devastation, and the deep societal fractures will not be undone overnight. Rebuilding shattered communities requires long-term commitment, combined effort, and above all, an enduring concern for human dignity. In addition to the trauma of displaced children and those who have been taken from their homes, our social workers and our professional staff estimate that 75% of Ukrainian school children suffer some form of post-traumatic stress disorder, with 1 in 10 children refusing to attend school or to engage in any kind of social interaction. We commend the efforts of world leaders as they try to negotiate the quagmire of conflicting claims, allegations, and grievances that surround any global conflict. However, as an active witness to the suffering of the Ukrainian people, and with over 1,000 workers and volunteers providing medical, psychosocial therapies, humanitarian aid and support to a suffering and fearful population, we implore those leaders to take a step back and to consider the following. What if their own children, their own mothers, aged relatives and dear friends were innocently caught in this or any other global conflict that are a blight on our past, our present, and our future? Would they not want the bombs and drones to cease, for people to emerge from underground and breathe the fresh air of peace and the joy of freedom? Recalling the Sovereign Order of Malta's commitment to providing health care and support for those at risk, particularly in light of the Holy Family Hospital in Bethlehem, we made a statement in October following the devastation in Gaza, noting the suffering of innocent Palestinians, particularly women and children.
Our love of the Holy Land, sacred as it is to Jews and to Muslims, has been severely tested by the calculated violence that has recently been unleashed on so many innocent people whose only desire is to live in communities that are peaceful and prosperous, where the young can live lives of opportunity and brotherhood, not lives of poverty, hatred, or mistrust. We all know the statistics, we have heard them so often. The number of innocent Jewish children, mothers, elders, fathers, brothers. We have seen the devastated bombing of cities and towns, the million of people displaced, the cries of Palestinian children and their parents, and the sheer hopelessness of it all. We are very much aware of the carnage and destruction that we have not seen since World War II, but of which we have had a stark reminder watching the conflict unfold in the Ukraine. The healthcare system in Gaza is under immense strain. 30% of hospitals cannot function. The rest are at breaking point. Since October 7th, there have been 143 attacks on healthcare facilities, 81 in the West Bank, affecting ambulances, compounded by physical violence to health and emergency personnel. In Gaza, 62 attacks on medical facilities have resulted in over 500 fatalities and another 500 healthcare workers injured and unable to accomplish their mission. This alongside the thousands of civilians killed and the tens of thousands injured. And the numbers go on and on, with one single question in the mind of everyone hearing a bomb exploding or anticipating their own death or injury: when will all this end? Whichever faction was responsible for, or whoever's missiles landed on the grounds of Al-Ahli Hospital, one thing is clear: it is the innocent who ultimately bear the heaviest burden.
The dilemma of the small island states, potential victims of climate change, may well create large population groups that become diaspora because their territory ceases to exist, not due to war or conflict, but because of the consequence of climate change and the environment. This will be a totally new phenomenon in international law. How the international community treats these countries in exile will be a challenge for the next generation, and it may well be that lessons can be learned and applied from the 900-year experience of the Sovereign Order of Malta, which in 1794 lost its territory, yet continues to exist under the protection of the Church and with the support and recognition of the international community, and which today enjoys a seat at the table of international consultation and decision-making, and has redoubled its efforts of service to the sick and to the poor. Thank you.